Hey, hi everyone in person and online. We're so glad that you all could be here today. We're here obviously to talk about the Knight-Hennessy Scholars Program at Stanford University. And to do that, we have the Associate Director of Admissions for Knight-Hennessy here to talk to us today, Jennifer Radley. So I'll pass it over to you and let you take the word.
Thank you. Hi, everybody, and hi, everybody on Zoom. As she said, my name is Jennifer. I'm Associate Director of Admission for Knight-Hennessy. What that means is most of my job is to run our evaluation and selection processes and sit on our committees. Part of my job is to come out here and introduce Knight-Hennessy to all of you. I tell you that just so you can know what kind of questions that you might get some good answers from me about. So what am I going to talk to you about today? I'm going to tell you why Knight-Hennessy exists, what we do at Knight-Hennessy, and then hopefully you're like, that sounds amazing. I would like to join you. And then we'll talk about how you can apply. And then I'll have plenty of time at the end here for any of your questions. Although feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself on Zoom and interrupt. That is very welcome. So first off, why does Knight-Hennessy exist? So our overall vision, the big why of why we exist, is to cultivate a growing global community of visionary, courageous, and collaborative leaders who are committed to creating positive change in the world. Our mission, what we do in support of our vision, is to select and support a multicultural and multidisciplinary cohort of scholars and prepare them for leadership roles in, this says academia, industry, et cetera, but really any area of human endeavor. That's what we're trying to prepare folks to be purposeful leaders in. A quick history lesson: we were founded back in 2016 by John Hennessy, who was Stanford's 10th president. Before he was Stanford's president, he was the chair of the engineering, or the dean of the engineering school. And before that, chair of the computer science department, all the while running a bunch of companies, inventing a bunch of things, doing a lot of things. So he has a lot of experience in many different areas. He was coming to the end of what he calls his first 5 careers, and looked around and thought, you know, Stanford, other graduate schools are doing a really, really wonderful job at training students and giving that discipline-specific knowledge, right? But what is needed is a program that is going to train future leaders to use that discipline-specific knowledge, right? So he wanted to create this graduate level fellowship. Phil Knight provided the founding donation for our program, so that's why we were called Knight-Hennessy. So every year we select up to 100 scholars. We fund up to 3 years of graduate study, and we equip you for leadership roles. So that's what Knight-Hennessy is and why we exist. As a Knight-Hennessy scholar, you would be part of a really vibrant intellectual community at Stanford. There are 9,000 graduate students at Stanford in more than 150 different degree programs, ranging everything from, of course, computer science to Slavic languages to history to chemical engineering. Anything you want to do, there's probably a program at Stanford that suits you. So there are 7 different graduate schools at Stanford. All 7 of those schools are physically located on the same campus. I would like to highlight that because what it does is make it really, really easy for you all to pursue interdisciplinary research if that's something that's interesting for you. It's very easy to take classes across departments, to work with faculty across departments. That is not always the case at all graduate schools. So we think it's something that makes Stanford a little bit unique and a really exciting place to be. Stanford's campus, of course, is located in the Bay Area in California, relatively near that bridge, not super near that bridge, but in the heart of Silicon Valley. And it's really Stanford created a lot of the stuff that came out of Silicon Valley that we know today has affected so much of our world. So it's a really exciting place to work with as kind of a spirit of innovation and a comfort with ambiguity and a drive to kind of make things happen. So it's a really, really exciting place to be a graduate student and then to be starting or continuing on your career. So let's talk a little more about Knight-Hennessy's leadership program. So our leadership development program has these 3 goals: to grow your multicultural perspective, to deepen your commitment to the greater good, and to prepare you to drive meaningful results. We also identified these 9 traits and 6 behaviors. This is both what we're looking for in our applicants and also what we strive to deepen and reinforce in our community of scholars once they join us. Our leadership program overall is called the King Global Leadership Program, and it includes a series of projects and lectures and other kinds of experiential learning opportunities that are designed to reinforce these traits, behaviors, and help you make progress on these goals. So importantly, our program is supplementary and complementary to your graduate education at Stanford. So what that means is you are first and foremost a graduate student at Stanford. That is gonna be your priority, that is gonna remain your priority. Knight-Hennessy exists kind of on top of and alongside your time in your graduate program. To kind of give you the opportunity to learn and to grow alongside scholars from many different disciplines and many different cultures, which will help your research in the end as well. So I want to talk now about a few of the different types of projects that we, let me try to move this real quick, hold on, this new bar so you can see the top of the slides. Time out. Nope, that doesn't work, okay. So what that says, you can't see it, but it says storytelling. So what storytelling is a weekly class for all of our first year scholars. It is kind of, if you ever ask any of our scholars what was the most meaningful part of your time at Knight-Hennessy, almost all of them will say storytelling. So what storytelling is, it's a workshop led by 2 professors in Stanford's Theater Performing Studies department. And basically what they're doing is teaching you really kind of foundational communication skills, right? Because it doesn't matter if you have the best idea in the world, if you can't communicate that idea and convince people that your idea is worth pursuing, it's not going to go anywhere. So that's what we're trying to do here. That's not a skill that you get taught in many graduate programs. It is a skill that is helpful for anyone in any graduate program. You could, in your second year, you will participate in Leading Yourself, which is a series of workshops led by Tina Seelig, our executive director, where she is going to teach you kind of, walk you through a series of workshops that are designed to help you understand your own leadership journey, focusing on things like failure and resilience and giving and getting feedback, idea generation, things like that. We also offer these, those that says retreats. So we also offer three local weekend retreats. The fall retreat happens in Monterey on the California coast. It is just for first year scholars. It happens a couple of weeks after they start at Stanford. So it's kind of the big introduction both to the leadership programming, because John Hennessy, our founder, and Tina, our executive director, will do a whole bunch of kickoff leadership work with our scholars. It's also a really, really wonderful bonding opportunity for the 80 or so members of the cohort to get to know each other right off the bat. The winter and the spring retreats are open to members of all cohorts that are active. And so those are great opportunities for you to get to know the rest of the cohorts that are active at any given moment. All right, we also offer, that says McMurtry lectures. We also offer a bunch of different types of events where we bring in people to talk to our scholars about various things. So our McMurtry lectures are our flagship events. The McMurtry lectures are where we bring in a leader from many different sectors at different points of their leadership journey, where they talk to our scholars. Usually they do a short presentation followed by a Q&A. So some of the past McMurtry leadership lectures that we have brought in include former Vice President Al Gore, former Secretary of State George Shultz, astronaut Alan Ochoa, Nobel laureate Francis Arnold, the former President of Chile, Michelle Bachelet, LeBron James came a few years ago. So lots of people from many different industries that come in and talk to our scholars and give them really kind of invaluable firsthand knowledge about what it's like to lead in all of those different sectors. In Curiosity Corner, these happen once per week on Wednesdays during lunch during the academic year. So what we do is we bring in a Stanford professor from many different departments or some kind of outside person with connections to Stanford, and they talk for a little bit about their research, about some problem that they're tackling, and then we'll have these really fascinating conversations, because remember, all the scholars come from so many different disciplines and so many different backgrounds and places that we end up with these fantastic multidisciplinary conversations tackling problems from many different lenses. They're really, really fascinating conversations. We also, this won't work now.
I think it's because I clicked on the bar.
Just clicked.
Technology.
Okay, so we also offer a few different types of experiential learning opportunities, things that allow you to really kind of get your hands dirty and work on projects. One of them is Keystone projects. So these are really like Knight-Hennessy in action. So what a Keystone project is say you as a scholar, you would come in with a project or a problem, something that you want to tackle. Right, you would pitch your idea to the rest of the scholar community at the beginning of the year. Anybody who wants to could then sign up to join your team. Knight-Hennessy would support this endeavor with funding and with mentorship from our wider community. You and your team would then work on that project, however that looks to you throughout the year, and then all of our Keystone Project teams will come back together at the end of the year to talk about what they learned, what they accomplished, what they're going to do next, what they failed at, things like that. So many Keystone projects last year over year. Some of them started back in 2018 when we started, and are still going. And then the global travel study trips. These are 1 week long trips that are led and curated by Stanford faculty members. They are themed basically on the faculty members' research. So you get to go on one of these trips during your time with Knight-Hennessy. So we've been to many different places. A trip just came back from New Zealand last week. We are going to Palau later this year. We've been to Jordan, Norway, India, Chile, Alaska, Mongolia, Japan, so all over the place. So it's a really great opportunity for you to meet different global leaders and different leaders in different international companies and learn about global leadership. And finally, we recognize that a lot of the benefit of being a Knight-Hennessy scholar is the community that you become a part of, the rest of the scholars that you get to know. So we do a lot of events that are really designed to deepen those bonds in between our scholars. These are different types of community events like art nights, story nights, music nights. We also have recurring community meals throughout the year. So these are every Monday through Thursday during the academic year. We provide lunch for all of our scholars. So every Monday through Thursday, you'll see about 100 to 150 of them kind of stream into Denning House, which I'll talk about in a second, to interact with each other, to communicate with each other, to collaborate with each other. So it's a really wonderful, kind of daily touchstone for a lot of our community. We also offer a lot of scholar-driven events. So these are events where you as a scholar would want to put something on. Knight-Hennessy would support this with funding and with logistical support if needed. That becomes a collaborative event if it's very complicated. So these are things that enrich the kind of academic or the cultural life of our community. All right, so some of you may be thinking, I'm going to be very busy as a Stanford graduate student. How am I going to do all that? So let me put your mind at ease. Of course, as I said before, your graduate program remains your primary focus. Our required time commitment is very deliberately minimal. So what you would be required to do as a scholar is 1 hour per week. That's that storytelling class that I talked about. 1 evening per year with a quarterly town hall where our whole community comes together. One of the retreats per year, so 1 weekend per year. And then participation in 3 of our 50 to 60 or so electives that we put on every quarter. So minimal time commitment, quite low. Most of our scholars spend a lot more time with us than that. But the problem that they report, especially when they first started, is they want to do everything, and then they realize they actually can't. So this, Knight-Hennessy would never actually be it would never kind of negatively impact your ability to make progress in your graduate program. All right. So that's a lot about what we do. I want to tell you now a little bit about who we are. So our first cohort joined us back in 2018. So we have named 8 cohorts. We are looking on the hunt for our 9th cohort right now. Our first cohort back in 2018 had 51 scholars in it. Our 2025 cohort that's starting with us today actually has 82 scholars in it. So we are slowly making our way up to that steady state of up to 100 scholars per year. We're not going to go bigger than 100 ever. Our cohorts are very multicultural, very international. So we've named about 600 scholars so far. 45% hold a non-US passport with 81 different countries of citizenship. 17% were the first generation of their family to go to college, and they have gone to more than nearly 200 undergraduate institutions. So very multicultural bunch with lots of varied life experiences that come together at Knight-Hennessy. They're also very multidisciplinary. So we have had scholars from 112 different Stanford degree programs, 47% pursuing a professional degree, that's JD, an MBA, or an MD, 41% pursuing a PhD, and 37% pursuing a master's degree. That does equal more than 100% before one of you raises your hand and tells me my math is wrong. That is because 10 to 20% of each cohort do choose to do a dual or a joint degree. So that's something like a JD MBA or an MD PhD if you just really like to be in school for a decade or so. So we have representation in our community from all 7 of Stanford's graduate schools. So I want to point out here, our biggest contingent comes from the School of Humanities and Sciences. That is Stanford's largest school. That's everything from chemistry and statistics and to things like Slavic language studies and history and political sciences. So that's a humongous school. Followed closely behind by our professional schools, business, law, and medicine. course, the School of Engineering. With our smallest schools, our sustainability and education. So this breakdown that you see here is not a reflection of any kind of targets or quotas that we have on the Knight-Hennessy side. This is just how our admission breakdown has worked out so far, and it largely mirrors the size of Stanford's graduate schools. So I want to pause there and just ask you guys in the room, which graduate program would you think of applying for? Start over there.
I'm looking to like a JD, MPA, probably dual.
Okay, great.
A JD.
Okay,
Economics,
PhD or master's?
PhD. I'm applying to law school.
Okay. Law school.
JD or MD.
Okay, mostly I'm coming in hot. All right, that's exciting. Okay, so most of what I've been talking about so far happens here at Denning House. So Denning House is not a dorm, not a residence hall, nobody actually lives there, but it is a building that was built just for Knight-Hennessy. It is only accessible for Knight-Hennessy scholars and those of us who work there. And it is a really kind of warm, beautiful, welcoming home away from home for everyone that is connected to Knight-Hennessy. So at kind of any hour of the day, you can walk in and find other scholars who are studying together, collaborating with each other, building things together, things like that. So it is a very special place. All right, so the final component of what we do, last but not least, is funding. So what we provide funding-wise is up to 3 years of funding. So I say up to 3 years because the number of years of funding that you receive from Knight-Hennessy is directly tied to the length of the degree program that you are admitted to at the time you were also admitted to Knight-Hennessy. So for my JD friends in the room, all 3 years of JD is covered by Knight-Hennessy, is funded by Knight-Hennessy. For my PhD friend, of course, PhDs take longer than 3 years. Stanford has a 5-year funding commitment for all PhD students. So the way that works for you is 3 years of your funding would be from Knight-Hennessy, and then the remaining 2 years from the econ department in your case. So what we actually provide is graduate school tuition and associated fees, a stipend for living expenses. We will fund travel for you to go home or somewhere else. We won't ask questions once per year. We will give you a relocation and technology stipend to help get you moved out to California and buy you a laptop or something that you need to get started in grad school on the right foot. And you can also apply for academic enrichment funds, which, as it might sound, are things that enrich your academics. So this kind of big broad category of funding, usually for things like conference attendance, journal subscriptions, things like that. So that's funding. So now that you've learned kind of why we exist and what we do, I will jump over to talking about admission. So first, our eligibility requirements. We are open to residents of all countries. We welcome and encourage applications from citizens of all countries. We do not have any targets or quotas by region or citizenship or anything like that. Everybody goes into the same applicant pool and is evaluated in the same way. We do have 2 basic eligibility requirements. The first is that you must apply and be admitted to a Stanford degree program. So what that means in practice is you, as an Knight-Hennessy applicant, would be submitting 2 separate applications to Stanford, right? Both to Stanford, but one is going to your graduate department and one is going to Knight-Hennessy. Let's talk a little more about what that looks like in a second. And you must have completed your first undergraduate degree within the previous 7 years. So for anyone wanting to join the 2026 cohort, that means you must complete your first undergraduate degree in 2019 or later. Probably not a problem for many of you in this room, but just bear that in mind if you go out into the world and work for a couple of years and then decide grad school is where your heart lies. Keep that 7-year eligibility window in mind. So from our applicants that meet those basic eligibility requirements, we will choose scholars who most strongly demonstrate these 3 criteria: independence of thought, purposeful leadership, and civic mindset. So let me tell you what those are. Starting with independence of thought. So independence of thought, we are really looking at your intellectual orientation and outlook, things like communication, problem solving, comfort with ambiguity, things like that. So we are looking for visionary thinkers who are curious, open-minded, analytical, eager for cross-cultural perspective, and genuinely excited to boldly and creatively address our world's important challenges. Next, purposeful leadership, we are looking at what you have done and how you have done it so far in your life. So we're looking for courageous leaders who are ethical, decisive, resilient, driven to achieve meaningful results, and motivated to inspire others to effect positive change at scale. And civic mindset, last but not least, civic mindset is your care for others, both in thought and in action. So we're looking for collaborative community members who are humble, empathetic, trustworthy, oriented to acting in service of others, and deeply passionate about contributing to the greater good. So these are the things that you want to be focusing on. First, thinking broadly, what have I done in my life so far that relates to some of these criteria? And that's what you want to be thinking about highlighting in your application. which we've designed the application with a couple of goals, right? One, to help you better know yourself, who you are now, what you have done. Two, who you want to be and what you want to do in the future. And three, for you to be able to communicate all of that to us. That's the goal of the application. Timeline. Okay, so our application timeline goes like this. Our application opened back in June. It will always open in June. Well, I won't say always, things can always change, but it will usually open in June. Our application for this cycle to join the 2026 cohort is due October 8th, so in just a couple of weeks. So but there are 5 components of our application that you want to be thinking of putting together. So there's just an online application. Most of the online application is basic biographical information, things like that. But also in the online application, we will ask you to pick out 6 employment experiences you have had and 3 activities you participate in and 3 honors and awards that you have won that you have won that you want to tell us more about. So the things you have done that really are the most important to you. You will also submit a 1-page resume. So some of what you've included in that online application will definitely appear on both of those. That's totally fine and we don't expect you to have had 2 different lives. But the resume, think of it as much more like a high level kind of chronology, so the scaffolding, the thing that helps us understand how to put the rest of the pieces of your application together. Whereas that online application gives you a lot more of an opportunity to really tell us what this thing was that you did, what impact you had on it, why it mattered to you, things like that. So definitely I want to recommend that everybody take that section of the application seriously, meaning don't just copy and paste from your resume and move on and think, why did they make me put the same information twice? We really are hoping to get different sets of information from those, even if you're talking about the same thing. So we will also ask you to submit transcripts for every undergraduate institution that you attended for more than 1 year. That can be unofficial or official transcripts, whatever is easier for you to get. We will ask you to submit standardized test results if your graduate program requires them. So every program at Stanford makes their own decision on standardized testing. This is things like LSAT, MCAT, GRE, etc., and English proficiency testing. So if your graduate program requires those tests, so does Knight-Hennessy. If your program does not, we do not. You will also submit 2 letters of recommendation and then answers to our short answer and essay questions. So a few things about letters of recommendation. These is a very important part of the application. So we always get questions of who should I ask? Who can I ask to write my letters of recommendation? So I'll start with who can I ask? You may ask anybody to write your letters of recommendation except for family members. That includes peers, right? That includes professors, that includes bosses, that includes anybody. So you want to be picking the people in your life who can best provide concrete, specific examples and stories of things that you have done that you're telling us about elsewhere in the application that demonstrate our criteria. We don't look at kind of rank or prestige or fanciness in general of the person that wrote your letter. So really, really just say, who are the 2 people in my life that can really build on the things that I'm telling them elsewhere in the application and provide those concrete, specific details. For our short answer and essay questions, has anybody looked at our application so far? Yeah, okay, so what we ask in our essay questions are things like, tell us your short and long-term goals, pretty standard question. We will ask you to tell us 8 improbable facts about yourself, less of a standard question. These are 8 standard things, eight things that you have that are true about you, but that people are often surprised to learn about you that are unlikely to be true. So just have fun with that section. And then our longest essay question is connect the dots. How have the influences in your life shaped you in 550 words or less? So that is a big, broad question. It's a question that requires a lot more thinking than writing. So it's kind of a question that really, you have to have some moments with yourself and be, what are the influences? What has shaped me? Right? So this is this question that you want to spend a lot more time thinking and really honing and sharing with the people in your life and making sure that it sounds like you if you're comfortable doing so. There are no kind of right answers for what you include in the essay questions. There's not a specific answer that we're looking for and hoping that you land on. These really, really are an opportunity for you to really show us who you are and why you are who you are. Remember, you spent the rest of your application telling us this is what I've done. I went to school here, I worked here, I did this. So the essays are really the opportunity for us to get to know you better and for you to explain really who you are to us in those essays. So that's the Knight-Hennessy application, due October 8th. At the same time that you are preparing that, you're also going to want to be, of course, choosing your graduate program. Most of you already have, but choose your program. You want to figure out what the application deadline is for that program, because October 8th is the deadline for Knight-Hennessy, same for all of our applicants. The graduate program applications they have all the different deadlines possible in the world, we think. So you want to go figure out your program, go to their website, look at what the deadline is, and make sure you're submitting that application by that deadline. So very common question, do I have to submit my graduate program application by October 8th? No, you don't. You submit your graduate program application by the deadline that they have set for their Knight-Hennessy applicants. So most of you will submit your Knight-Hennessy application well before you submit your department application. Okay. You also want to be thinking quite carefully about what you include in those two different applications, right? I would not want anybody to leave this room thinking, okay, I'm just going to put together one application and submit it in two different places at Stanford. Why is that? Well, what Knight-Hennessy is looking for, that independence of thought, purposeful leadership, and civic mindset, probably pretty different than what many of your graduate programs are looking for, which is your preparation for rigorous graduate study at Stanford, whatever that means to them, right? Some parts might be really, really similar, like the resume might be kind of similar, though you might choose to tweak your resume in different directions based on what is most relevant to Knight-Hennessy versus your graduate program. Those transcripts, those should be the same. It's very strange if they're not. Your letters of recommendation, you can ask the same two people to write your letters of recommendation. That's perfectly fine for your graduate program and for Knight-Hennessy. But if you do, make sure that they know that they are writing two separate letters. Even though both are going to Stanford, it really doesn't do us at Knight-Hennessy a lot of good to read a letter that really convinces me that you're a perfect fit for the PhD in chemical engineering, for example. That doesn't give me a lot of evidence for Knight-Hennessy. So you want to tell your letter writers, you're writing one letter that's talking about my fit for graduate school, my preparation for graduate school, and a different letter that's talking about my preparation, my fit for KHS. And here's what KHS is, here's what their criteria are. Maybe even show them your application, tell them the things that you've done for KHS that they have been involved in, that they can speak to, right? Help them essentially, and make sure that they understand that they're not writing two letters for Stanford. They're not writing one letter for two different places at Stanford. Okay. So what happens after you apply? So after that October 8th deadline, we will spend the rest of October, November, and December reading all of our eligible applications. In January, on a rolling basis in January, we will invite our top 500 or so applicants, the applicants that most strongly demonstrate those criteria, to submit a 2-minute long video statement. The prompt for the video statement is teach something to your fellow cohort of Knight-Hennessy scholars. Something is a deliberately broad word choice for us. So what kind of video statements do we receive? I've watched hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. They generally fall into two categories. The first category are the more kind of academic research focused ones, where you will take us into your lab and show us something that you're working on, explain some concept that's important in your discipline, things like that. The other category are the more kind of lighthearted ones, where folks will teach us how to cook something, teach us how to do a dance, teach us how to survive an avalanche, repack a parachute, let's see, eat with your non-dominant hand, pack a diaper bag, burrito wrap your cat, give them medication. So all sorts of things that we see, the huge variety of things that we see. There is not, again, a right answer that we're looking for. There's not like something that we're watching going like yes or no, and your application moves forward because of that video statement or gets denied because of that video statement. So really, when you're choosing what to do your video statement on, focus on things you care about, something that you are excited and passionate about teaching us, that just help us get to know you a little bit better. So out of that group of roughly 500, we will select up to 180 finalists at the end of January. Those finalists will be invited to participate in a two-part finalist experience. Part one in mid-February is an online individual interview. This is a behavioral interview, meaning we're asking you not for hypothetical answers, but for real life examples of things you have done in answer to our questions. Then the highlight of the whole evaluation process, I think, is immersion weekend, which happens in early March this year. So immersion weekend, we fly all of our 180 finalists out to campus from wherever they are in the world for 2 days of mostly programming. So mostly events, lectures, projects, experiential learning, stuff that really helps you get to know what Knight-Hennessy is and helps you get to know your future potential cohort. There's one final piece of evaluation that happens at immersion weekend, though, which is a group interview. So in the group interview, you go into a room, we pair you with a few other finalists. We give you a prompt that doesn't require kind of prior disciplinary knowledge or prior preparation or anything like that. You talk about it. Current scholars are also in the room with you evaluating how that conversation went. That's the final piece of our evaluation puzzle. So right after immersion weekend ends, We choose up to 100 scholars that make up our next cohort, and those folks have up until May 1st to let us know if they're going to accept their offer of admission to Stanford and to become a Knight-Hennessy scholar. So at the same time all of that is happening on the Knight-Hennessy side, you are also going through whatever the standard admission process is for admission to your graduate program. So for some of you, that might mean you submit the application and don't hear from them again until you get a decision. Others of you, that might mean coming to campus again for an interview, doing another online interview, whatever the standard process is, that is what you're going through as well. So all of our decisions are released at the same time. The departments release their decisions on many, many different timelines. MBA decisions usually come out first, and then every other program does things whenever they want to, January, February, March. So what that means in practice is many of our scholars already know at immersion weekend whether they've been admitted to Stanford. Some folks are still waiting to figure out if they've been admitted to Stanford. So common question that we get at this time: can I be admitted to Knight-Hennessy and not be admitted to a graduate program? The answer to that is unfortunately not. You must be admitted to a Stanford graduate program in order to be a Knight-Hennessy scholar. So while we don't review your application with your department, meaning I don't see your department application, your department does not see your Knight-Hennessy application, we're not making a joint admissions decision. We're making a separate admissions decision, but we do stay in constant contact with your department to make sure you're still in the running for admission to that department. And so if at any point a department comes back and says that they are not going to be able to offer you admission, then that's unfortunately also the end of your eligibility to become a Knight-Hennessy scholar. The opposite question though, if you apply for Knight-Hennessy and are not named a Knight-Hennessy scholar, can you still receive admission to Stanford? Absolutely, that's still possible. It happens every year where some people do get admission to Stanford, do not become Knight-Hennessy scholars. Many of them still choose to go to Stanford. So I want to highlight that to make sure it's very, very clear that applying to Knight-Hennessy does not negatively impact your chances of getting into Stanford for graduate school at all. So that's the whole admission process. All right, so very common question that we are getting more and more is, what are your alumni doing? So we're pretty young in the fellowship space compared to your Rhodeses and your Marshalls and your Trumans, right? We've been around for 8 years. So we have just under 200 alumni, people who've actually graduated from Stanford so far. We're very happy to see they're already making positive change and positive impact in their communities and in their industries worldwide. They're also very, very connected to Knight-Hennessy still, which is fantastic. So some of the things that we're doing to keep our alumni connected to us are alumni retreats and reunion days. We are inviting our alumni to come back and be our featured speakers for our King Global Leadership Program, to be mentors for Keystone projects and in other ways. So really Knight-Hennessy, once you're a Knight-Hennessy scholar, you are always a Knight-Hennessy scholar. You will always have this lifelong network of collaborators and people that you can work with who are all kind of working to make the world a better place in their respective countries and in their respective industries. All right, so with that, I'll stop talking at you and take your questions.
Perfect. So we're not recording